Thank you for being wonderfully fluent, making up for my deficit.
So we are live now. This is our second day of FestivalYA with Cărturești and Trei Publishing House. And today we welcome Maureen Johnson.
Hello, how are you guys?
The author of Truly Devious trilogy. We published on Young Fiction Collection at Editura Trei. And the third volume just hit the shelves. It's very fresh on the bookstores. So talk about the Hand on the Wall.
Okay.
Not many teenagers get to read it. So I will ask you to tell us about this last volume a bit.
So the last volume, you have to forgive me, I just blinked for a second because I'm about to release here in the US a book called The Box in the Woods, which is the next story in this new Stevie Bell story. So I've been so used to telling the story that I was like, oh yes, The Hand on the Wall. Let's go back a second. The Hand on the Wall is the concluding volume of the Truly Devious mystery, in which everything is revealed. As we left it, there had been a large fire in the city of Burlington. And in this book, Stevie will be confronting the devastation of what's happened to her teacher. And I'm going to speak carefully as to not to put too fine a point on it. All answers will be revealed, but the answers to what happened in 1936 and what happened to Hayes and everyone else are all to be found at Elengam Academy. And some of the clues are in plain sight. Some of the clues have been with you since the beginning. Hopefully, you'll be able to spot them, but they are there. And I would suggest having a good look at the map at the front of the book would be one hint.
Okay. Did this last volume emerge just as you planned from the beginning, or you change along the way something about the final?
When you write any book, no matter how well planned, you will, you learn to write any book by writing it. Every book gets written in its own way. However, these books, because of the nature, because they're mysteries, they are very tightly plotted and planned from the beginning. And so I very much had to stick to certain events. So it's stuck pretty close to the plan. Everything has to be in a certain place. More mysteries really require that precision. Who was where at what time, who sees what, who knows what. I work that all out in the beginning. So I absolutely, I chart it basically. So I know exactly times, places. So I very much have to stick to that. I may redevelop conversations and may switch the locations of some scenes that can be moved, but largely I stick to the plot.
You are playing with two time frames, in the present and in the 30s. How did you research that historical period?
I've always, first of all, I've very much have always been interested in classic crime and a few things. A lot of really kind of golden age or old style, Agatha Christie style mysteries that I've always read a lot of books that took place in the 30s. Basic historical research, reading books about the period, about the history and the politics of the period. But very specifically, some of this case is based on a very famous it's not based on it, but it's kind of inspired by a very famous kidnapping and murder case that took place in the United States called the kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's baby. There was a very famous pilot named Charles Lindbergh. I don't know if you...
Yes.
Everybody knows Charles Lindbergh. Okay.
Yes.
I can't really tell if he's a sort of an American icon or if everybody kind of knows, but he first nonstop transatlantic flight. Someone kidnapped his son and held him for ransom. But in the end, it was discovered that after a long period of searching and trying to negotiate with the kidnappers, that the baby he was a little boy, he was about 1, that he was dead. And his body was found in a field, and that he'd probably died on the night that he was kidnapped. And that all of these ransom demands and everything that was going on were just an attempt to get money. The baby was, he had died. But there were ransom notes. There were mysterious meetings in cemeteries. He was very rich and he was a pilot, so he would search by airplane, by boat. It was the most famous case in the world. It took over all of the media. And there is a detail that there were so many reporters on the scene, and this is the 30s, that they had to install telegraph wire around this town, and that there were so many telegraph wires that it blocked out the view of the sky at points.
Oh my God.
That kind of case is sort of what inspired it. But I use all kinds of things. Do I have my maps? So I'm just going to reach over here for a second. So I use a lot of things. I thought I had my map in here, but I actually bought off of eBay, for example, maps of the area in Vermont from the 1930s, so that I had accurate maps from the time of but I also have somebody asked me the other day, what are the creepiest things you've researched for your books? And I was like, well, as it happens, let me show you this folder, which is called, you've all read Truly Devious, I would assume. I would guess everybody here has, because a slight spoiler, this folder is called CO2 Research. And these are all printouts of things like the Journal of Forensic Sciences, a fatal case of CO2 intoxication in a fermentation tank. Carbon dioxide, death in a vat, death in a refrigerator, so creepy things to have around. So if anyone ever comes into my house and is like, so tell them why. But also I would do things like, I went to Vermont, to the town of Burlington several times, and I would do really simple things like just walk around and look at the things that stuck out the most to me that were indicative of the place. And then I would just make simple lists. This is just a list of things like snowshoes on the wall and flannel and the skinny pancake. It snows so much there that, for example, the hotel I stayed at had all these spikes by the doorway. And I was like, why are there spikes by the doorway? And they said, oh, that's where we hang the snowshoes in the winter because the guests can borrow the snowshoes to walk around town. And I was like, I would never live here. This is a terrible place. I like it here, but no, thank you. But things like that, you have to, you can run the danger of doing too much research and then never writing your book. So because this was 3 books that took place in the same place and time, I did it on a rolling basis over 3 to 4 years. But it involves, everything from books to practical items like the maps, and then walking around, going to places and touching things and looking at things that would have been there at the time. I collected old postcards. A lot of buying things off eBay, like old postcards, things like that.
I know a trilogy, it's a huge project. And I want to know how did you manage all these details, the 3 volumes, the characters? You must be like a general with an army and align everyone.
I have a big whiteboard on my wall. That is how I do a lot of stuff. I have this whole wall of my office over to the side here. Big white bulb, here, I'll just turn the camera. See if we can. So there's a note board where I pin notes. Those are going to be notes for the new books. The whiteboard's over there. Little glimpse of how it all happens. So right there, pin notes there, so that I can see a lot of things I need to keep in visual reference. So the whiteboard, for example, it was planned as a trilogy from the beginning, and I knew, so I started very small with this. I start with the simple question of, why would someone do this? Why would someone kill somebody? And then I built the first event, and then I built everything out from that, all the things that go wrong, because you solve a murder case by tracking the things that have gone wrong frequently. Yeah. And you only get a couple little things that blow off this event. A footprint, a piece of paper, an overheard conversation, somebody at the wrong place at the wrong time. Once I kind of knew what I wanted to happen, I figured out, because it was so much story, how to break it in two places and have a big thing happen. So I knew where I wanted to stop each book. And then I had a big chart that was like, here's the 3 books. Here's the single books. Here's the, I should have grabbed it. Everything is in this room, you guys. Everything is here. It's just slightly moved around. Is it here? I apologize. I just cleaned my office. That's the problem. Never clean your office is a tip, because I put everything away. Because I dusted. I'm setting up for the new book. So I was like, everything has to go away, because now I'm doing this new one. A lot of charts. There's a lot of charts involved, so I can track what I'm doing. And then a lot of it I just keep in my head and walk around mumbling to myself. A combination of just talking to yourself and writing stuff down on random Post-its. And then later on you go, what is this? What does this say? Foot? Who knows what this means? I'll put it with the others. And then you have a pile of Post-its that just have weird words on them, and you have no idea what they're about. That's a good method too. Confuse yourself.
Yeah, good ideas made.
Yeah.
Raised. Did you have Stevie Bell as the main character right from the start, or?
Yes. I grew up loving detective stories, specifically detective stories. I liked all mysteries, but I had a real spot for the person who comes in and wants to solve the case. And to this day, I've just been a lifelong. It started with Sherlock Holmes when I was a little girl. My parents bought me these little children's versions of classic books. They were about this big, and they were condensed. They abridged them, and they had illustrations. And so the first full book I ever got was The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is a Sherlock Holmes story. And I was so fascinated by it. I could not stop thinking about it, how smart he was and how he figured everything out. From that moment, it's been a lifelong thing. It's something you see when you are 4 or whatever can carry you all the way through your life. And that really was it with me. And every mystery I could get my hands on as a kid, especially a detective mystery, I read. So I really wanted to make a detective. And because I made her in these books, she's actually going on to solve other cases now, like the book that's coming out here in America next month, which is called The Box in the Woods, where she is going to, it's the summertime, and she is going to solve a series of 4 murders that happened in 1978 at a camp, in which 4 teenagers were murdered and found in the woods. So she is now on other cases.
So do you plan to have many standalone novels with Stevie Bell as a main character?
I'm working on the next one right now. So the next one is underway. That's the notes on the board over there. I'm setting up her newest cold case and present case and location. It's exciting. I love doing it.
It is.
I really, really love it. So if you get a job where you get to do what you love, you're pretty lucky. So I'm very happy.
Elengam Academy, it's fascinating. It's buildings, the place, and I think you you did a great job with descriptions and all the atmosphere there. How important is the setting in your writing?
It's very important. I also asked for your forgiveness if you see me drinking a lot during this. It's springtime allergy season here in New York. So my throat feels like I just swallowed a handful of tacks. So I hopefully will not sneeze my way through this interview. I apologize. I don't think you guys will be angry at me if I sneeze. You won't be like, that's it, we're done with you. No. Goodbye. Bye forever.
No.
Setting was sort of everything. I have always been obsessed with a couple of things. Settings really matter in mysteries. For example, has anyone here read a book called And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie?
Yes.
Okay, some nods. That's a mystery in which 10 people are murdered on an island, or a country house, or a school, or the woods. A lot of times in a mystery story, you have to put your characters in a place where they're stuck. Only a certain number of people could have committed the crime, and they may still get killed. So that's why a lot of, say, English mysteries take place in a little town where everybody knows each other, or the manor house, or the island. So I needed to build a place from the ground up that where these murders could happen. And also I built the school from the ground up as a murder machine. I literally constructed it sort of brick by brick to be a setting for murder, and in some cases a weapon for murder. So I spent a lot of time building that school. I drew the maps. I asked the publisher in the US to make the map because the map of the grounds mattered. Because things that happened in the past and in the present, it's important to know where the buildings are and what's under the buildings and how far the buildings are apart and things like that. So everything about it, like how it was built on a mountain, how many roads can get into it, because if you have to do a mystery where you're killing off your characters or you can't let them escape, you have to build traps for them that they can't get away. So I had to put a river on one side and rocks here and one road and snow. I put it in Vermont because it snows. So what you will see is in the Hand on the Wall, the snow, I knew in the end it would end with the snow, and the snow will come in the Hand on the Wall and they will be stuck. And that is very true of what happens in Vermont. You can wake up and there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, or everything can drift in the wind and you could get 8 feet of snow and it literally boards the doors up with snow. So especially on a mountaintop. So there's a reason they're up on a mountaintop in Vermont. From the very beginning, I destined them for a snowstorm in Vermont.
You like to put your characters in some very challenging situations.
That's the job of every writer, is to put your character in, whether it's emotional or physical, psychological. Our job as writers is to create people and make their lives difficult. That's the job of a writer, because there's no story that's like you make people and then great things happen to them and that's it. That's not a story. Unfortunately, your job is to make characters and then have bad things happen to them and have them have to figure out what to do about it. So it's I once went back to my old grade school, which is small, where I was, little kid. And I explained this to a large group of students and parents, that my job as a writer was to make people and have terrible things happen to them. And this man listened to it. And he listened to I talked about this for a half an hour. And then he put up his hand. It was like a big guy. I said, "Sir?" And he said, "Do you think you do this because there's something wrong with you?" Maybe. Seems like a fair question. Fair enough. Okay. I think it's a fair question. If it is, it's a good form of, it's a happy form of something wrong with you, but that is the job of a writer.
Yeah. So we received a question from Facebook.
Okay.
How much do you spend on outlining, writing, and revising for one book?
Each of these books was written over the course of, they're about 1 year apart. The figuring out phase of each book with the Little Truly Devious is a little different because I had to figure out all three. So that took me a few months to work out all three of them. For the individual ones, this one took, Box in the Woods, I mean, the new one, 1 to 2 months, 3. It tended to take 1, 2, 3 months to figure it out. I'm in the phase of figuring out the newest book now. And a lot of that really does involve just wandering around, thinking about what would be interesting. You have to let your imagination go and just go, what if that, like, what would be an interesting place or reason? I kind of start with the why. Why did this happen? Like the why something happens in the Box in the Woods, I wasn't sure for a while. And then I just happened to read a book, a very deeply unrelated history book, and something in it, I just read something. I was like, that's a thing that's very interesting. That would be a very compelling reason for something to happen. And then I sketch them out. I try to write them in miniature and say, here's how it's going to break down. And then the writing process is for me, a very organized, disorganized, hair-pulling race to the finish line. I do work well under pressure. So as we get closer and closer to it being due, I write my brain starts going very quickly. So I would say, yeah, the outlining and planning it takes a few months, and then the writing probably takes another 6 or so months. And then there's a lot of screaming at the end, which I consider to be a very important part of the process. And then you'll know the book is almost done. In my case, when I write to my friend, who is also my agent, and ask her to come and hit me over the head with a brick. I do this every single book. Now all I have to do is send her a single word note that says, or text that says brick. And she says, good job. I see you're near finished. And I say, you are not my real friend. A real friend would come here and kill me. And she's like, you're about to do it. Good job. And I was like, you are not my friend. And then we have this back and forth for a while. And I keep telling her that she doesn't really love me. And then I finish.
Right. Madalina Cristina, ai și tu o întrebare, văd.
Yeah, hi. I'm so grateful to be here. My question is, did you find it more challenging to write the first book or the second one in the series? And what was different about the writing process?
I think the second one is always the hardest because, first of all, I know I broke the rules of mysteries. You should never do a mystery in 3 parts, but I wanted to do a mystery in 3 parts. So I set it up in such a way that there was a finishing event and an opening event. So Truly Devious ends one thing and starts another. I had to bridge the conclusions of Truly Devious and all the conclusions. Everything gets answered in The Hand on the Wall. Everything. So I had to, it's very delicate. It's a very delicate balance in the middle of anything where you have to, it's a bulk of action. I have to give you a lot without giving you everything. It's the hardest part. Because in the end, you're like, here it is. Here's everything I knew I was going to give you. Here's everything that you can have it all now. I don't have to hold anything back. A lot of the middle book is deciding what to hold back and fighting the urge to give more. because you want to give people all the answers. Like, I worked all this stuff out. It's a puzzle. Do you want to know how I did it? Here's how I did it. So that's the hardest part. I think the second book was hard.
Thank you.
I have also some questions I received by email. Aida wants to know, Stevie Bell got anxiety. Many teenagers today can relate to that. How did you come up with the idea to give her this trait?
Because I suffered from it myself. At one point, I had it quite badly. I had it for a physical reason because I had anemia and didn't know it. And I was having rolling very, very severe panic attacks at some point almost constantly. And it was debilitating. And I was trying to write a book during it, and it was very, very hard to focus. And some of the things that you have to kind of play games with your own brain, because anxiety won't hurt you. It can't physically do anything to you. It's a shadow monster. It seems very, very frightening, but it can't actually damage you. And you have to keep remembering, like, oh, it's just anxiety, except anxiety isn't just that. It's all consuming. Like it just feels like someone is taking control of your brain, and you can't, and you have to try to reach for the rope to pull yourself out. And you can use a lot of things to try to pull yourself out, like maybe like listening to stories or podcasts. I listen to a lot of true crime and podcasts. I love listening to things. I'm doing a lot with my hand today. I don't know what this is. I feel like I'm a magician's assistant. But I think that people that want to fix things, like Stevie wants to solve things, she wants to fix things, she wants to put things right. And I think that those, being a detective or wanting to solve, you want to find the bad guy, you want to make it okay again. Also, I just know a lot of readers. I talk to a lot of people have anxiety. It's so common. How could you not have anxiety right now? Especially now with COVID and all these things that have happened, anxiety is everywhere, and everybody's probably going to experience it at one time or another. So it's just a part of her. It's just something she has, and it's just part of her life. She's like, I do this. I also have this. It's just part of her.
Alexandra, would you open your mic and camera to ask your question? Alexandra? Okay. Alexandra wants to know. Okay.
I want to know, what was it like to work with Cassandra Clare for the Shadowhunters short stories?
So I wrote with Cassie 3 collections of Shadowhunter stories. And that came about because she and I are very close friends. And we often, there's a group of us a group of writers that work together and are just good friends. And we help each other out by talking through story problems and things like that. And we will sometimes go on retreat together and work together in various locations. Like we'll stay in a house together and we'll work and workshop each other's books and talk through our difficulties. Like, I have a character, or I have a plot problem, and this is what's going on. And it started because we were just joking around about characters in her book. Specifically, we were talking about a character named Magnus Bane, who he was immortal, and he's lived for, at this point, about 500 years. And we just kept making jokes about things that might happen to him. Specifically because he can conjure demons. I just started making a joke about him conjuring a demon to try to figure out what to buy for his boyfriend for his birthday. And this demon is really angry at being conjured, but the demon is also really basic and has really dumb ideas, like, you should get him a scented candle. How about a decorative cushion? So it was started as a joke. And then we started having some more ideas of where we could send him. And she said, why don't we do this? Like, do you want to do this? Do you want to work together? And we'll make a book of stories. And we sat down, I think in one afternoon, and wrote down the list of things that we thought were fun idea, like places we would want to send him. And then from there, we kind of talked like, okay, let's maybe do this. And maybe you will write this one and this one. And it was a lot of fun. Also, it's really fun to write in another person's universe for a little bit because everything's already built. It's like going to a theme park, almost. Like all the structures are there and you're like, I can use this, and oh, I can put them over here. And I used to work in theater as well, so it's tools and things that I can use as props, and you know, I can move this around, and I can stage this here and stage this over here. So for me, it was a lot of fun, and it's very helpful in your other writing. It works another part of your brain creatively. Also, it's just fun to work with your friends. It's really fun to work with our friends. And Cassie in particular is really fun to work with because she's very generous, and we just have a lot of fun. Like, again, it was just based on a series of jokes that we told each other. So that's a pretty good way to start a project.
Thank you.
The next question is from Facebook's Smaranda Buzdugan. If you went to Elengam Academy as a student, what do you think you would study there?
Hard to say. Elengam, so the requirements to get in is that you have to have a thing. I guess I would be a writer. I guess I would be Nate. I think I am Nate. Nate just writes and then is terrified about having to write some more and thinks he has no ideas and can't write and is freaking out all the time. I'm not saying that's me, but I'm not saying that's me and every writer I know. So I had a lot of fun creating Nate, because Nate is just it's me and all of my writer friends rolled into one person based on real conversations. So I guess I'm just Nate. I think I'm just Nate. I'm Nate. I'm just hiding upstairs with my t-shirts and hiding from deadlines and doing everything but writing, and then sneakily writing. And everyone's like, are you writing? I'm like, leave me alone. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. So that's what I would do.
Question from Wana Turcea, also on Facebook. Have you ever read any of your books from start to finish like a regular reader?
Yes. It's weird. It's really weird. I've gone back to read some that and it's upsetting. It's interesting. And it's upsetting because all you see are their mistakes generally. The one I thought was really interesting was Sweet Scarlet, which I thought was funny when I reread. I was like, oh, okay. I don't remember writing that. That's a pretty good joke. That's the only one where I wasn't freaked out all the time. Yeah, and because of the nature of these books, I have to go back and reread them all the time. And it's true that all you see are the mistakes and the stuff that you want to fix or things like that. Yeah, I guess that's the answer. And I know that that's an answer a lot of writers give, but it's true because it's not that you're ever really finished a book. It's that the book is taken away from you by the editors. You know, given a choice, I would work on a book for 1,000 years and nothing would ever get done. And it's very good for me to have the editor and someone saying, okay, just give it. You have to give it to us. You have to give it to us now, Maureen, or we're going to come there and we're going to take it from you.
You have a deadline.
Yeah, you have a deadline and you have to give it to us. And I say, but why? And they say, because people have to read it. And I was like, no one will ever see this. Let me just do it in my hidey hole. And then I write to Kate and say, kill me with the brick. And she says, no. And then gives me the thumbs up because she doesn't love me. So.
Andreea Voinescu, îți deschis tu microfonul?
Hi, I'm so grateful to be here. And I think you got to this question a lot, but how do you balance your life with your work in general?
Well, that's changed a little bit over this last year because of COVID. So usually I am able to travel more and have more just time in my office by myself. But for the last year, it's been my husband and the dog and I inside the same, we haven't really been able to get out much at all. So we've just been sitting on top of each other, which has been good and bad. I have always been a writer. And I've sort of built my life and lifestyle around that. I balance it sometimes when I'm stuck, and this happens to a lot of writers, you start to do everything else but write because you can't figure out what to do. And it's often when you're doing something else that you figure something out. Like you're taking a shower or you're out doing an errand and you're suddenly like, I got it. And then you write a post-it to yourself that says like foot, and then you put it down on your desk. And you're like, what is this? What? Okay. But I do it by, you have to, I think, plan and schedule, because you're entirely in charge of your own schedule in life. And you have to set it, I think you just do have to be good about scheduling your time, and then trying desperately I need solid time blocked off with no distractions. So frequently travel was a part of it, where I would go somewhere, say with Cassie and to a house, and basically lock yourself away and just do nothing but write 12 or 14 hours a day, or be talking about writing constantly. So it's a combination of scheduling things at home and sometimes leaving to do some of the heavy lifting work in a place with no distractions. But it's part of my day in day out life. So it also involves walking the dog and getting food, and you just build your schedule. Everybody builds their own kind of schedule, because people write in all kinds of circumstances. People write books when they're university students and they just build it. They write between classes or late at night. People write books when they have other careers and jobs. I used to write while working at a desk job, or really late at night, or on a train in the morning. You just do whatever you construct your writing schedule with whatever you've got at hand. So there is no ideal writing schedule. I just get the ideal one because this is what I do for a living. So I get to build everything around it. You just make your schedule and you make your own plan. But a lot of times, sometimes you just end up doing it when you can, or you use opportunities. Like, oh, I'm on a plane. That's great. Like, it's nice and quiet. I do a lot of writing. I write while on planes. So finding out places where it's good for you. Like, I haven't been able to go to a coffee shop, say, for a year. I haven't been able to go out and sit somewhere. I haven't been on any planes. I haven't been anywhere else. I just haven't been anywhere else. That's weird. But is that an answer, or is that just a long rambling? It's a little long and rambling, but that is the answer.
Yeah. Estra Lepădatu, would you open your...
Yeah. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here because I absolutely loved the entire Truly Devious series so much. And I was wondering, what's the most valuable piece of advice that you received specifically concerning writing? And also, how do you write such believable characters that readers can relate to?
First, thank you. So I went to writing school, and I feel like what I learned in writing school wasn't how to write. I sort of learned the opposite lessons of what you think you're going to learn. How do I put that better? So when you're writing school, you take all of these really long workshops. That's a lot of what you do. And you write and you bring your work in, you distribute it. Everyone has a couple of days to read it, and then they all come back in and they critique you and they give your notes. So say there's 10 people in the room, and they might read your story and go, I liked this story, but I think you should get rid of the mom. And then the next person will say, I like the story, but you need to put in more of the mom. And then the third person will say, I like this story, but I think you should turn this mom into a truck. And then the fourth person will say, there's a mom in the story? I didn't even notice. And you'll get 10 different confusing points of view. And the whole thing you have to figure out is who to listen to. And I said this at the end of my time with my thesis advisor. I said, largely, I just kind of learned who to ignore. And he said, welcome, that's the lesson of writing school, is who to listen to and when to know to ignore, because anything you write, you're going to hear lots of opinions about it. Some people are just going to be polite to you and say like, oh, this is great. And some will mean it, and some will just being polite. And some people will have comments that are useful, and some people will tell you things that are in no way useful. And a lot of writing is figuring out, is knowing that everybody reads something and thinks something different about it, and being okay with that everybody takes it differently, and kind of figuring out how to listen to other people to make your own voice come out. And sometimes that means taking some things and leaving some things behind. And not to be freaked out in any way by things not going well. Your job when you start writing is to write very badly. All writing is bad writing until it's good writing. Or your job when you start sketching something out is to just sketch it. And that means it's going to be rough. And a lot of people get upset with that. And they go, I wrote this thing, it was terrible. It's like, don't worry about it. That's the nature of writing. It's like when you say you want to play the piano. You're like, I want to play the piano. And then you sit down and you just start hitting keys. You're like, I'm terrible at piano. Like, that's not how it works. You have to learn how to do it, and you practice, and you get muscle memory, and you learn how to play. And you would never think, I'm bad at piano because I sat down and I didn't know how to play the piano. And it's the same with writing. You will write and you'll be like, I'm not sure that this is good. If you think that, great, you're doing exactly the right thing. Just keep writing. Every book you write is like that. Every writer I know looks at their work at some point and is like, well, this is a mess. That's the job. So the job is to create a mess and be comfortable with the mess you make. So that would be the best advice I can give.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madalina Cristina.
Yeah, I was wondering if there are any tips you would give a beginner in writing, for example, a novel. I've got many ideas over time, but I'm not really sure what to do with them. Some are pretty random and some are kind of connected in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. When you have a bag of ideas, and I'm doing it right now. I'm picking which of these ideas I want to turn into the book. And first you generate a lot of ideas, and then you look at them all and go, I would say at some point you just have to look at the one that speaks to you the most, the one that you just keep coming back to. Just the one that, like, when you're just not thinking about it, is the one that comes back into your head. The one with the atmosphere that you want to be in the most. The one that you're like, oh, that's the feeling I want. That's the plot. That's the character. It just will kind of keep entering your head. And you'll just kind of say to yourself, that's clearly where my head's at. And that's the one I would go for. And sometimes you can combine ideas and try it. And then if you find that you've put two ideas together and they don't quite work, take them apart. Like I've written entire drafts of books and then realized that I put two things together that shouldn't be there. And then I just went in and I broke them apart and rewrote them, and taking out major characters. That's okay. But you'll just go to the thing that keeps coming into your head that just feels like the right one to you. That is the right one. And you can write them all. Like you'll have lots of ideas, but go with the one that you want to spend the time with, the one that keeps floating up.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sebastian from Facebook wants to know, who is your all-time favorite author?
I don't have one. And I think that when you read a lot, you fall in love with books all the time.
Yeah.
And frequently when you read, the last thing you read is the best thing you've ever read. It's like how I feel about dogs. I love dogs. I love dogs. And every time I see a dog, it's like I've seen a dog for the very first time. And it's like, I can't even, they're so wonderful. I can't even believe they exist. I'm like, a dog. Can you believe it? And, you know, I have a dog. I go to the dog park every day, and I'm full of excitement every time a dog walks up to me. It is like a miracle has happened. And that's sort of how I feel about books. I read another good book and I'm like, can you believe it? Someone has written a book. So you can't, I just don't have favorites. There's certainly a lot of writers I go back to a lot, that I have a lot of feelings about, that I have loved since I was a child. But the good news about books, there's good news about books, is that there are a lot of them. And there's always going to be more good ones to read. You cannot read them all.
Yeah.
It's a bottomless supply. And there's always going to be new and good things to read. And I reread a lot, obviously. You go back and you're like, I want to read that again. And you visit that book again. But because there's too many good books in the world.
Indeed. Another question from email, Tudor. You published your first novel in 2004. What is the most important thing you have learned since then?
A lot of things. I mean, when I published my first novel, I didn't know what it was going to be like to publish a book. It was just like, I published a book. I don't know what happens now. I don't know. I did it. You know, it's just things change, and I've written a lot of books, and things go up and down, and the culture around books will change. The conversations about books will change. The way people talk about books will change. The media on which books are discussed will constantly evolve. Maybe today it's this, or TikTok, or Instagram, or whatever. And then 5 years from now, it's going to be different. And that will constantly evolve. And so I think the important thing is not to get too hung up on, not to be freaked out by change. Just write and go with it, and don't, just be comfortable in the knowledge that things change. And, you know, the job is to tell stories in lots of different ways. And being comfortable with change is hard, especially as you grow or get older. Like, you guys will be much, much better at handling, you know, all the nuances of conversations on TikTok. You know, all the nuances of conversation on every form of media. You're the experts. So I write for you, and that means I know that I am writing for experts, which is weird, but true, because I always know as a writer of young adult books that I am writing for experts. And you will know if I am faking it. So I just tell the best story I can. And I guess I just have a slightly laid back, I'm confident in the knowledge that the world changes, and I just try to be, it's like you're on a little raft and you're just riding down a river. You're like, I'm on the river, man. I'm riding along. I know I'm going to be seeing different things along the way. That's the best advice I've got.
From Facebook, Juana Turcea, what advice would you give to a reader that never read any of your books? And what book would you recommend them to start with?
Well, reading my books is certainly not an obligation. I always feel slightly apologetic when people, I don't know why, I'm always like, I wrote this book, you don't have to read it, I'll throw it away. Like, I don't know, I just don't want to bother anybody. I've written a lot of types of books. Also, do you know how much my publishers hate when I'm like this? They're like, Maureen, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to give anybody a hard time. They're like, what is wrong with her? I've written a lot of types of books. So I think it would depend on what you like. If you like mysteries, Truly Devious is a good place to start. If you like mysteries with paranormal, aspects than the Shades of London series, which begins with The Name of the Star is a good place to start. If you like kind of romance or a contemporary adventure, there's things like 13 Little Blue Envelopes. I'm actually looking over at my books. If you like comedy, there's one called Sweet Scarlet. I've just written a tie-in novel with Disney that's connected to the new Cruella movie called Hello, Cruel Heart, which takes place in 1967 London. It's about how Cruella de Vil becomes Cruella de Vil. If you're a fan of those characters like and Disney, that's the place to start. So I've written a lot of different types of things. So I would say base it on if any of those are kinds of books you like, then there's different options.
Thank you. Ezra, would you open your mic, please, and ask your question?
Yeah. What's the most recent book you loved? Because you said that you constantly have new books that you're absolutely obsessed with. So what's the most recent one that meets those requirements?
I read a lot of books to give quotes for them, to give blurbs. And I recently read one called Ace of Spades, which is coming out.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm so excited for it.
Which I really liked because I love mysteries and it's a contemporary mystery. And I'm going to be doing an event with her. One of my release events for the Box in the Woods is going to be with her, and we're going to talk about contemporary mysteries. So I really liked Ace of Spades. I read a lot of nonfiction. What's the most recent one? Hold on. I write down. I keep a little notebook. This is how I run my life. A little David Bowie moleskin notebook with charts in it. So, you know, I make a lot of little spreadsheets and checklists. How do I do it? This is how I do it. A lot of these are older books. These are all mysteries. And some of them are old. Yep. Blurb book, old, really old book. A lot of classic mysteries. So if by new you mean from the 1930s, it's a bad answer. I'm sorry. Is it a bad answer? It's a good answer. It's a fine answer.
It is a good answer. I think it is.
Thank you.
Yes, it really is. From email, do you miss the book tours?
I do. Here's what I don't miss about them. Airports. Here's what I do miss about them. People. I do. And hopefully this year we'll be back doing them. I know that we're not doing them here in the US. I'm starting to see some events come back, but nothing yet. I would think that maybe by the fall we're going to be doing, I think so. I think by the fall we'll be doing in-person events again. And then I think probably they'll really resume next year.
Yeah.
Fully. I would imagine that we'll be kind of really coming out of the full-on lockdown. I imagine a lot of us are, just stepping back into the world is really over the last 4 days is when I've kind of stepped back into the world because I am now fully vaccinated. So I had my first person, like I had a first person over in my house, and it was so wild that I will probably take weeks to process it. Just go, someone was here. My dog has not gotten over it. She's just her mind has been blown. My dog spent half of her life during COVID. So she's like, mostly what she remembers is that nobody can come in. But yes, I do look forward to it. And I think it'll be not immediate, but pretty soon. And then maybe Romania. Maybe I'll just constantly be touring. I can't do that. I have a dog, but yeah.
You can bring him.
No, she does. My dog I love her, but she's bananas. And she's what they call a reactive dog, which means that she barks at everything. So, you know, I got to take care of my dog. That's my job.
Yeah. Sebastian from Facebook. When did you first realize you wanted to be a writer? And do you keep track of the number of books you own?
I realized I wanted to be a writer when I was very little. I probably said it out loud when I was 6 or 7 or something like that. And everyone said, oh, okay. And I said, no, really, because I was a very determined little girl that looked like, it was like, yes, I'm going to do it. And they're like, okay, whatever. But I did it. So I don't keep track of the books I own. I get books all the time. I will say that I am now trying to have fewer physical books and more electronic books. And that is because I live in New York City and I already have a lot of books and space. And for example, I love digital borrowing from libraries. That seems to me like a miracle, that you can just wish a book into existence the second you think of it and borrow it from the library electronically. And then you don't have to worry about taking it back. They just take it from you and you can't forget because they're like, we took it, don't worry about it, it's cool. So I think the greatest thing that's ever happened is digital borrowing. So yeah, I just try to have more digital books, because also you can just take as many as you want away with you. And because I often will want to travel. If I'm traveling, I'll want to refer to them constantly, and then I can just have them all. So that's better.
I think the last question is the hardest one.
Okay.
Comes from Maria. How would you change the world we live in?
Okay, Maria. Well, points for going for it. Well, we have a lot of problems, don't we? And they certainly seem to be based on a number of things, like the climate and wealth inequality, and viewing. I think that it would certainly have something to do with understanding that we all share a planet and that we all have equal rights to the planet and equal rights to a good life. And when you lose sight of that is when you lose sight of how to take care of a planet and how to take care of other people in a society. So it would have something to do with recognizing that this is our home and that we all are citizens of it equally. And it's a difficult thing to resolve. So hopefully I won't have to provide an answer immediately. But it would be something to do with that, which, even though I just write books, I feel like all of us in whatever work we do work towards that goal in some way. Because all books open up a window, they really do, onto another way of someone else's, fictional or real, looking at the world, or a situation, or a setting, or a circumstance. And people that read tend to be people that have greater empathy and curiosity about other people. And empathy and curiosity are two of the most important tools and qualities to have. So the more you guys read, the more you can help the world, is sort of what I think.
Great answer. Thank you so much.
Also, may I compliment you all on your unbelievably beautiful English. You speak better than I do. You are stunning. You should all be incredibly proud of yourselves for your astonishing fluency and beautiful pronunciation. You are amazing.
Yes, they are. And I'm very proud to moderate these meetings, because I discovered so many young people and so many bright people. I'm very happy with doing this.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your festival.
Yes, thank you. We will have. Thank you so much. And as I said, we expect you in Romania whenever you want to come.
I'm on my way as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Okay. So thank you so much.
Bye, guys.